First question, find out a little bit about your background and how you got into voice acting as a career.
Yeah. So my background was basically doing stand-up comedy. It's hard to say that there was like one specific thing that I did that was like my launching pad, but I do think that in pursuing stand-up comedy through sort of before, during, and then for a short time after college, doing that, more and more people started coming up to me if you were doing an MC at like a charity event or something on for some golf charity thing, and you're running the auction and doing all that stuff and you're doing your material, and people would come up and say, you got a really great speaking voice. Are you a Toastmasters person, or have you ever thought about, like, do you do a radio show? And they would keep asking stuff about your voice. So you'd hear people responding to whatever they hear in your vocal tones that I never did. And I did a ton of characters and like voices in my act. I was never much of like an observational comedian. It was more about like trying to like set up a scenario, becoming a character in that scenario, and then having people laugh at me to make it okay for, like, it's okay, you can laugh at me in this moment because I'm very clearly, by taking on this persona, mocking that person or sharing my pain or whatever it might be. And so more and more people would say, like, hey, you do characters and voices, like, are you in cartoons? And I just kept going, no, no, no. So everything that led up to that point was like, I got my degree in screenwriting. So I was pursuing film school. I thought I was going to be a writer, and I was developing screenplays with somebody at some point. And then I finally said, all right, I'll go bark up this voiceover tree, and started taking some classes locally, then took an animation class up in LA. And there was somebody who, quote unquote, discovered me in that class and brought me to the agency. And the rest, as they say, was history from that point forward. So it was just sort of a roundabout way of doing it. But that, I would say, everything that goes into your development as a person, and not just an actor, is what sort of is your background. I liked writing. I liked performing. I did musical theater as a kid.
Okay.
Through junior high and that kind of thing. So all those things were sort of like what led me to this thing. And then all of a sudden it was like, I like this. I like being behind a microphone and working with a production crew, because I liked the production side of things really more so than even the performance side. So it just became a really good fit.
You've got quite a cool little setup here. Like, do you feel more at home doing that than, say, when you were used to be like on stage or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. Stage work is interesting. It's that's a, man, it's like, when it's good, it's so good, but when it's bad, it's so bad. And so there was the rush of, in fact, I was just watching an episode of Crashing on HBO, and it's with Pete Holmes, and it was really funny. He was getting this big opportunity in his career to open up for this headlining comedian. And it was so funny as they're both walking. There was all this stress going on backstage for like a mishap and a miscommunication. And the headliner, as they're getting ready to approach the stage, he's just cussing up a storm and saying how much he hates stand-up comedy. And he's like, why do I do this? I hate this. It's like everything I've ever wanted in my life was to be this thing that I hate so much. And he's saying all this as he's about to approach the stage. And it was funny because I remember thinking, like, that's kind of the relationship that I had with it. It was like the heart pounding, the anxiety of everything leading up to the moment that they're about to call your name. The next, even when you're starting out, you're doing 7-minute opening, 10-minute opening sets. When you're going to go do 20 minutes or 40 minutes, it's even worse, because you know that next chunk of your life is, for the most part, completely unpredictable. You've got your material, you've got stuff you want to say, you've got things you want to do, but there's a lot of variables that enter into it. So it was a nerve-wracking thing. And I always liked the challenge of it. I liked sitting there and it's funny, I just now had this thought. So I always approached stand-up comedy kind of like football, or at least, not soccer, American football. You'd run your play, and you'd go back and you'd huddle up and you go, okay, how'd that work? Did we gain yardage or did we lose yardage? And now what are we going to do to fix that? And stand-up was like, you do your set and you come off of it, and you just sit there and start tearing down the night, and you evaluate, like, okay, so that joke didn't land, or, oh, I stepped on that. They were laughing at that. I never knew that was something that they'd find funny. And so you rework it and you retool it, and then you go back out another night and you try this play and you do that sort of thing. And voiceover is really the same thing. but without all the drunk people in the audience that you have to babysit. And you put on so many hats when you're on a stand-up stage, and you have this weird relationship with the audience, with the wait staff, with the management of the club, and it's all in nanoseconds of like your brain just firing off. And I recently did a stand-up set with, I hadn't done it for 12 years, and I did a stand-up set with Carlos Alazraqui and Greg Griffin and Ken Pringle up at this comedy club in Burbank called Flappers. And I hadn't performed stand-up in 12 years, and it was so funny. I got done with it. I wrote brand new material. I didn't want to repeat anything I'd done in the past. Wrote brand new material, went up without getting a chance to work it and tool it and do all that kind of stuff for weeks leading up to it. I did it, and the next day I was so unbelievably depressed. I went right back to all this like self-loathing and self-hate and tearing down the night and just, literally like abusing myself mentally. And I thought, oh, how funny. It was weird to have that sort of reaction to doing this thing that I did for so long, and going back and going, I don't think I wasn't happy doing that. It really wasn't that I was happy doing it. It was that I was trying something. I was trying to find out who I was and pushing boundaries. So it was one of those reassuring things to go, no, I'm very, very happy working with producers and writers and a director and creative people behind a voiceover microphone, and not subjecting myself to I didn't need that affirmation anymore. I think at that time in my life when I was pursuing it, it was like, I need to know that I'm not crazy, that like these thoughts or these observations that I have about the world and, the stuff that I've experienced, people, it's okay because we can all laugh at it. But I think I was also just doing the like, please like me, but boy, I hope you like me. Like, please like me. I need this. And thankfully I've gotten to a point in my life where I'm like, I don't need you to like me. It's like, it's okay if I'm not your cup of tea. And so it was weird to revisit that stuff. And it was actually reaffirming to say, hey, I've found a career that I'm passionate about, and I like my place in this industry that I get to work with. I mean, literally one of my greatest joys is from having a background in screenwriting is when I see really well-written material and I get to be the one who gets to execute it.
Yeah.
Which is just a blast. Like I get to go, oh, I know what they're doing here, and this is brilliant. This is so funny. And really in animation, I've found so many creative writers and so many funny people. So it's an absolute treat to be like, this is cool. I like that I can have my background in stand-up, have my background in screenwriting, have my background in musical theater and all those different things, and have it become this like little tool belt that I get to go, oh, I'll pull this out, or even suggest things, that kind of thing. So yes, I'm very, very happy behind a voiceover microphone in a quiet little studio.
The way you had to start acting when you were going into voiceover compared to, say, when you're on stage, can you feel it yourself that you have to sort of, like they say, like on radio, where your voice has to sort of overperform a little bit? Like you have to really like put it into perspective, like because you're just saying it rather than acting it. Millions
of people have said this over and over and over again in the business, like acting is acting is acting, and it really is. That being said, there are different like muscles that you flex in whatever medium you're working in, and it's kind of crucial, because if I'm delivering, and we have to ask these questions all the time for like video games and cartoons, even cartoons at times, but cartoons tend to be a little bit more broad in your approach and a little bigger. But there are times where it's like, if you are going to deliver a theatrical performance, in the on-camera world, you can convey all sorts of things through just a look, or the way you contort your face, or there's all these things that kind of help assist that performance. And with voiceover, it's just, you've got to convey all sorts of stuff literally from the neck up, and that's it. And really, it's just not even from the neck up. It's in this little region right here and right here. But we don't visually see things. You don't see the performance. And even if they're taping you, like Disney likes to tape and do things like that when you're working with them. But even then, one of the worst things you can do is put a camera in front of me if I'm doing a voiceover session and tell me, now we want you. It's why facial motion capture and stuff like that can get real tricky, is because now they throw in this thing where they're like, well, we want the data of the dots on your face to register as this big emotional thing that's happening with this little, character. Yeah. And so they have you overact your face a little bit, and it's like, it never, I look at it like, my job is to deliver this vocal performance for you. And I want to be able to do that in the best possible way without people going, oh boy, or rolling their eyes. And like, so there's that fine line that we're always like sort of like dancing along between, oh, it's too much or it's not enough. Because if we deliver a theatrical performance, it, you know, like I said, on-camera actors can benefit from their face saying a ton, but you don't have the benefit of that when you're doing voiceover. So if it's a radio commercial like advertisement and they want to grab people's attention, yeah, you're gonna. I mean, think about how often we listen to radio commercials and people don't talk like that. We don't talk like that. But if you talked the way we talk, it'd be boring. You know, it would really just sort of be like, man, this person doesn't sound like they're all that emotionally invested in this product that they want me to go buy. And there's been trends where they try to be like, I'm so aloof. But even then, that's a put on sort of like voice and vocal tone of like, I don't even care. And it's like, yeah, but again, I mean, granted, people in LA talk like that all the time with that vocal fry. But it's a weird dance that you do between, we've been doing this since the dawn of radio. When you think about, I love going back and listening to old broadcasts where you know, 4 out of 5 doctors choose Camel cigarettes. And it's like, but nobody talks like this. You know, if you met somebody on the street that was, you know, I'm sorry, you're asking for directions, you'd think you're a crazy person. Like, why are you talking like that? And yet the human ear, we love to have that performance. We love to be sort of entertained or enthralled or, you know, whatever it might be. So yeah, you're always sort of donning different performance styles, be it for cartoons, for video games, you know, for a radio ad, for a TV voiceover. There's a lot of different ways to approach stuff. TV's different. You can do a more relaxed, subdued theatrical read for TV because there might be visuals that are supporting it with actors that are conveying it, you know. At its core, acting is just acting. You're just delivering a performance, but there's definitely different approaches to it in terms of the tools that you're using.
Your voice is so instantly like familiar when I'm just out and about. I remember we went to New York actually in October. It's my first time back in the US for years.
Oh, no way.
And we randomly got this limo to pick us up from the hotel. Had no idea it was coming. And then literally like 10-15 minutes into the journy, your voice came on in an advert and I was like, oh, that's Roger. Like, I knew straight away, yeah.
Oh, how funny.
I can't remember what advert it was. It was a radio ad of some kind. But I was like,
that's hilarious.
My partner, I was like, that's Roger. She's like who? I was like, that's Roger Craig's-Smith.
See, that's so weird. Like that really is weird to me. Because I don't think, like I said, when I was doing stand-up, I wasn't like, oh, this is like, oh, I'm going to grab the microphone and make, you know, audible love to the microphone with the dulcet tones of my, you know, my voice. I've never thought that. Like when I hear stuff, I'm always like, ooh, what do I sound like? You know, it's like I'm like a lot of people. I don't like the sound of my own voice. It feels nasally and it's like, you know. I never think of it that way. So when I hear people go like, oh, I've recognized your voice and things, I always just go, it's weird to think that they think it's got a tone that they recognize, because I just think, no, I'm just, you know, just doing my job. You know, I'm doing the gig. That's a strange thing. It's and yet it also doesn't get all that. Anybody that tells you they don't think it's fun to hear their voice on the radio or on the TV or to see themselves as a cartoon is lying, because it's a ton of fun. I will always try to watch or listen or, you know, or play a video game that I've, you know, voiced a character in and that kind of thing. Just to kind of see also what did everybody do with it. I like the collective collaborative element of this job, which is, and I've used this analogy before, it's like I birth this vocal baby and then I hand it to people, and it's kind of up to them if they make the baby pretty or ugly.
Yeah.
And it's like it's out of my control at that point. So I like going in and seeing the finished product, because there's so many people that are responsible for how they make that sort of thing come to fruition. But yeah, so that's an interesting thing. It always trips me out when somebody goes, "Oh, I heard your voice," and da-da-da-da. I'm like, is that good or bad? 'Cause that means now I'm doing stuff that, you know, is in a vocal range that people are like, "Oh, there's Roger doing his thing again."
That's the great thing about it, though. I mean, there was another example. I went to Birmingham in the UK to watch the Marvel live show. Oh, wow. And obviously you do the Captain America voice as well.
Captain America, yeah.
So I didn't even know you were in that, and then it was kind of like, as soon as I heard the voice, I was like, yeah, that's Roger. Because I remember tweeting you about it. I was like,
yeah, you did. You tweeted me. I was like, ah, that's great. See, and that's such. It's like anybody that tells you that isn't incredible. Like, I mean, there's little kids that go and like watch these things, or, you know, like somebody that plays a video game. I've had people throughout the years. I've been so fortunate to do this long enough to have people like send me like heartfelt, you know, messages or emails and say, hey, I was in the hospital laid up with back surgery, and all I could do was, like, the only thing I could do is, because I was in so much pain, was play video games. And I played everything out of Assassin's Creed, and I fell in love with Ezio. And it's like, just I wanted you to know, like, your performance, like, really it brought me into the game that much more, that kind of thing. And you go, wow, that's because again, it's kind of like stand up. I go, I drive through LA traffic, stressed out and angry. And then I get to a studio and I have to de-stress. And then you get ready and it's like you go in and you're working with a director and a writer and people that are it's a complicated process, and you're focused on the gig, and it's very easy to it's because the job is I need to execute for this director. They're asking me to do it faster, louder, funnier, more heartfelt. You pop in your P's, so you're trying not to do too much into the microphone and all that kind of stuff. Like you're in that nanosecond firing off performance mode, kind of similar to stand up, and then all of a sudden you're done and you feel like, okay, well, they said they got what they wanted, and that's my job, is to give them what they were wanting with this character, vocally. And then you're back to driving home and stressed out and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you forget that it comes out. Or just this weekend I was at an auto race. My buddy who was hosting everybody at this thing introduces me to somebody else, and he goes, hey man, this is Roger. And he goes, he was the voice of Ripslinger in Planes. And this gentleman happened to work for the FAA, and so he's a huge aviation fan and was like, what? Oh, he's like, my son loves Ripslinger. It was like we're bonding over this and chatting about it. And it's a neat thing when you realize that it's like, oh, that's right, this work goes out and people listen to it, or they don't know anything that you were dealing with at that time. They don't know about any of your personal tragedies or trauma or joy or whatever was going on in your life. They know their experience with this video game or this cartoon or this movie or this radio ad or whatever it might be, and it's different for them. So it's like weird when you find people going like, I saw Captain America, and it's like, that's neat. It's neat to think that little kids are on like a cruise ship or something, or watching this live show, and they're seeing this gentleman in a Captain America costume with your voice coming out of him as he lip syncs to your performance. It's like, bizarre.
I must stress, 26-year-old men also watch those shows. It's not just the kids.
Oh yeah, well, so do 43-year-old men. So it does happen.
I was sat there with a load of 4-year-olds. I was like, yeah, I know that guy. You don't.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, use it. It's like that's the joke I always make with my family too. It's like when somebody goes like, if they ask, what do you do, and it's you kind of go, if they're trying to have somebody like be impressed by you, and most grown-ups have no clue. It's like, so I will always laugh and I say, well, do you watch this show? And they go, no. Do you watch this show? No. And I go, trust me, I'm really big with 10-year-olds. it's like your kids would love what I do. And it's like you as somebody who's the same age as I would probably be like, what? But your kids would think what I do is awesome. So just go with that.
You just mentioned as well about Ezio, obviously in Assassin's Creed. I think that's one of the main characters that I was probably familiar with your voice from kind of like my early teens sort of gaming, as well as Chris Redfield in Resident Evil.
Now I feel old, thanks.
Obviously you voiced loads of great characters. Is Ezio, would you say, one of the more challenging characters that you've had to voice? And also, have you got any particular favourites from your list?
The favorites thing is, I don't know, it always just depends. I mean, I've been able to voice Batman, so being able to say like anything as Batman is like, it's just incredible. You just go, man, I got to be Batman. And so the favorites thing is like, because it goes, there's so many things that enter into it. I would say yes, working as Ezio on Assassin's Creed 2 was easily the most challenging gig I've had, because they were, obviously I don't speak Italian, so they hired a dialect coach, and she spoke Italian, and that was for AC2. We worked with a different dialect coach later on, Peter Apicella, and Ida Darvish was my dialect coach on AC2. And AC2 especially, we didn't, this wasn't a, hey, you're doing this version like with Batman. It's like, hey, you've got to do something that's similar to what Kevin Conroy has established and all the other folks that have done this before you, so that you don't step too far outside the box that we will accept, for Batman's voice. And with Ezio, there was no previous, it wasn't like, well, that's not the Ezio I know. It's like, we're gonna create this character, and hopefully it's endearing and people like it, and that he's understandable, all that stuff. So it was an interesting time to be approaching a new character, one that we hadn't worked with before, and then also having somebody try to teach me how to say certain lines in Italian, and parroting back and delivering a performance and trying to get the accent right as close we could. We call it Italian Spanglish, because we were doing a blend of Italian, Spanish, and a little bit of a Western ear that would kind of go, okay, that sounds cool. That's where you kind of fudge things a little bit, and it's like, and also the way that they would speak Italian back then, is different than the way we interpret Italian today. So all those things we were constantly working with that stuff. So I would say AC2 is probably the most challenging. And really, there's no favorites. I'm so lucky to get to do this and call this a job, and it's weird. It's weird to have people from the UK reach out and say, "I would like to talk to you." It's like, why? Why do you want to talk to me? It's like, if you only knew how much of a dork I am, like, you don't want to talk to me. So there's a lot that goes in on that that is sort of surreal. And I look at it like, I have a job to do. I focus on my job, and so it's not so much favorites as it is that was a fun thing to be a part of. And really, lately I've been using this analogy of like climbing Mount Everest, and everybody wants to climb the highest, the peak that they can find. And I've done that. I've not actually literally done that, but in terms of my career, I've been able to do so many incredible things and be a part of so many incredible things that it's hard to look around and go like, well, that was my favorite, or this is the, it's like, because you're just happy to be still on the mountainside, kind of, I might not be at Everest, but I'm somewhere on those lower trails, just kind of going, it's not bad to be hiking and climbing up here and to have a career. So I'm joyful just in getting to like go to work every day and say like, yeah, I get to help all these creative people make their art, and I get to be a part of that process with that group of really creative, like, fun people. And it's like, what a joy that is.
Speaking about being on the peak of the mountain, and also the fact of, again, for me, finding out that you're in another game and not reading about it beforehand, Apex Legends, of course.
Yes.
As Mirage. I was sat there playing it, I was like, God damn it! Why? He's everywhere. Why did I not know you're in this game?
Man, the way they launched that,
no.
It's literally like it was like boom, here's everything, and so it was an audacious and bold sort of marketing plan behind it to just say, we're going to give this free to play game out to everybody and let everybody know that it exists all within 24 hours. It was just incredible. So every single thing I do is you never know what it's going to be or where it might catch on or how big it might get. So, that's just, it's incredible. And the success of that game is just immense. It's a blast. And I love Mirage. He's a fun character.
Over like 50 million players, I think, now worldwide.
And I think they're even above that. I think I heard they were at 60 million recently, wow. But I mean, it's still going. Yeah. I think it broke every sort of free-to-play record out there, which is it's incredible.
He's absolutely hilarious. Just everything he says, like when you're about to drop or just during battle, the kind of, it smells like victory or something, like it smells like, he's like, what does that smell?
How funny.
He's such a quirky character. Did they essentially give you everything you needed to work with? Say like he's this, he's that, or did you sort of bring some of that character to life that they didn't actually ask for?
Yeah, so it's a combination of all of that. So essentially, and this is like testimony to what it's like when you get a chance to work with a project where people are comfortable saying, hey, you do this and you're funny and you can come up with little quips and things, to tag on at the end of lines. That being said, here are the lines that we would like to record, and then we're also going to see like what you might come up with. And sometimes that's rare. Sometimes people don't want, they covet their words so much that they don't want people like playing around with it. And that can both be good, or it can also be very hindering in terms of like what you're going to do as a performer. The folks at Respawn were awesome with just saying like, hey, this is the guy that we're trying to create. This is what we think about him. Like his brain, he's super good, but his brain works faster than his tongue sometimes, and so he gets, he sort of gets discombobulated when it comes to trying to say words, or as he would say, he gets he gets confused. It's like they were like, that's the type of stuff that we want to capture with the guy, and so that being the case, let's see what you do. And so it was just kind of playing around, really, and then they would just say, all right, come up with some things for him to say. So it's like, that's thankfully where improv and stand-up comedy and screenwriting and all those things kind of come back into play, where you start going like, okay, I want to do something that's within the character, that's funny, that's appropriate, that isn't, violating anything, that's going to, create an issue with standards and practices and all that kind of stuff. It's like, so it's collaborative, and like I say, sometimes that's rare, but the folks over at Respawn were awesome with that, and they created a very, very funny, very cool character that sort of is off from and separate from the other ones, and that he is kind of silly, and not silly, he's still capable, but that he's funny with the way he kind of has these little self-deprecating moments, or man, I need to get out more, stuff like that he starts saying to himself. It's like, that's cool. It adds character, and that's all from the writing. That's all them starting off with, we've written a well-crafted character, and we're also comfortable with somebody coming in and try to put in little bits. And I honestly don't even remember which ones were ad libs, which ones were, it's like, obviously we're trying to like come up with stuttering points where he's stammering to get his words out because he's trying to think too quick and he's trying to use a big word that he doesn't really know, all that kind of stuff. And the little tags that we do at the end, sometimes that's them suggesting, sometimes it's me suggesting, so it's a collaborative process.
Say with Respawn, obviously, the success of the game, they love the character that you've brought to life. With previous jobs as well, working with developers and publishers, is it a case of sort of like, if they really enjoy what you've done with that character, have they ever sort of kind of like said, right, okay, for future projects, you're sort of like on our top list of people that we want to come back? So has that ever happened before?
Meaning like if they say, we liked working with you, like what you created, so we'll use you in another project?
Yes.
Or
yeah.
Anytime anybody's ever said anything definitive like that in my career, I appreciate the compliment, and I also know that it's like, it rarely comes to be. There's so many variables that enter into all of the decisions that go into making a game or making a cartoon or that kind of thing. It's flattering. It means that they like working with you and they like your capabilities, which is the job.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm supposed to do. But at the end of the day, I never know if it's really going to happen. And sometimes it does. Sometimes it's years later. Like somebody just says, it was such a joy working with you. You're going to be on this game. We don't know in what way. We don't know what we're going to utilize you or how we're going to utilize you, but we want to work with you, and we'll put you in something that we think would be a good fit. And that's awesome. Whether or not it comes back as you're a protagonist, or a main antagonist or something huge, or if you're just, Militiaman B, it's like, it's all good. I mean, all that is good. That is the job, is be, I always say, like, you got to show up early, be 20 minutes early, and that's on time, be ready to go, be, not angry or emotional about traffic or something going on in your personal life, because they don't care. Be funny and on point, and be good, and be done early. Make for an early day for them. Don't have them trying to drag the performance out of you, and then, socialize as much as you want, but get out of there and just kind of go on to the next, as the saying goes, on to the next.
People might know that you're voicing Captain America in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. I think that is later this year. Is that correct?
I honestly, I don't know. I don't know if I can confirm or deny that.
I thought I did read that online about you, but I don't know if that was.
Well, that's interesting. You can't always believe everything you see online. No, that's interesting. I mean, if it's something that has yet to come out, I honestly have no idea, and I'm being very serious in that. There's been, again, that's a situation where we've had a number of different voice actors lend their vocal cords to that character.
Okay.
And so I know that Brian Bloom has done Captain America for a lot of different games and things like that. So it sometimes is the cinematic universe, the animated universe, the gaming universe, that kind of thing. So I honestly don't know. That's interesting. I might have to Google myself today. It's a nice problem to have, but I mean, there's been times where it's like you work on projects that you worked on a year or 2 years ago and you forgot. And then all of a sudden somebody goes, "Hey, I think I just heard you in something." And you're like, "What?" I mean, that was literally how I found out about the launch of Apex Legends.
Oh, okay.
Somebody reached out to me on Twitter and was like, "Pretty sure I just heard you in a trailer." And I was like, "What?" And all of a sudden the guy, I think the kid or the guy had a link to the trailer to Apex Legends, and I was like, "Oh, it launched." I was like, "Oh, look at that, there it is." And I go, "Yep, that's me." And I was like, "Finally, okay, I'll confirm." So once that happens, then you can go, "Yeah, okay, I'm in it." But it's the reality of the business too, which is like there's so many things that you work on. You're sort of fixated on the gig. You're focused on, I want the gig to go well. I want to do my job well, and I want to make the client happy. And then you, like I said, you forget that it's like it gets to come out and people experience it and that kind of thing. So you often are like, okay, I gotta work next week, so I gotta make sure my auditions are competitive and that I'm still trying to do a good job with this, and you go from there. So when stuff comes out, or sometimes you're trying to think, I don't know if I can confirm or deny that, I don't remember doing that, and then you go, oh yeah, it turns out I was in that. There you go. If somebody's saying that I'm in it, that's rare. That's rare for somebody to say that they know, unless it's coming direct from Marvel.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Or unless there's a trailer where you go unmistakably, like that's Roger's Captain America. But otherwise, if somebody's just saying something that they claim to have information they're privy to for 2019, that'd be interesting to me.
One of my favourite characters that you've played, mentioned earlier, is Chris Redfield from Resident Evil. It looks like there's going to be more Resident Evil projects in the future with the success of the remake. Resident Evil 7 took the franchise in a whole completely different direction with the first-person horror. Is that a character that you'd love to kind of reprise the role as? Do you ever see yourself playing him again?
Always. I mean, it's in the fact is it's never up to me. I mean, it's like, again, like you say, like it's weird to be in this situation where you understand it's like we covet these roles so much to get to do something, but at the end of the day, it's not up to us. You know, it's not up to us to be. It's not up to us to say, oh, I'm gonna do this again. You know, and because it is a job, it's a job to say like you've got to audition, you've got to be competitive, you are competing for the gig, and so when somebody asks like, would you want to do that again? It's like, would I want to work again? Yes, yes, I would like to work again. And obviously we do have, you know, a love of working for certain characters and doing certain characters, and it would be fun to go back to do Chris Redfield for sure. But again, it's not up to me. So it's you know, if they came knocking and said, would you want to do this again? It's like, yeah, sign me up. Cool. It just depends on all those factors, and very often it's like, you know, I mean, as was the case with Arkham Origins with Batman, people are like, why not just use Kevin and Mark to do this again? And I think they said because it was an origin story and we were looking to get just sort of a little bit of a younger sound, and to have it be believable that this is where those performances would have gone to what Kevin and Mark have established so well. So that's just, you know, those decisions are made outside of Kevin or Mark's influence, you know, and it's like, that's the reality of this business is, you know, it's like, I just did the Batman 80th panel at WonderCon in Anaheim with DJ Bader and Kevin. And it was like, you know, the fact that there's so many people that are represented to have done voices for the animated work and the video games and that kind of thing. You just go, that's how it goes. You know, it's like, these decisions are made, and all of a sudden the phone rings and your agent goes, hey man, you know, Warner Brothers wants you, DC wants you for this, and you go, cool, all right, cool. You know, it's like, I didn't even know. And they're like, yep, they've had it in the works. And you go, all right, great, I'll gladly show up and see if they like it. You know, it's like, that's how that sort of thing goes. So as far as like opportunities to voice characters I've done in the past, again, of course, but whether or not that's gonna happen, I'll never know.
Are you gonna be appearing in the UK, any kind of like conventions or anything?
You know, as of right now, I don't think so. I'm trying to figure out a way to work the convention circuits with also trying to incorporate like a charitable aspect of it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. The convention scene has changed in a lot of ways, and I don't know that I'm all that thrilled with it. But so I have yet to know if I'm going to be coming out there or not. I'm working with a booking agent now to look into things, but even then, I think I'm driving this person nuts because I'll say like, well, if it's a new moon weekend, I need to go away and get to dark skies and take pictures of the night sky and do my hobby and all that stuff. And I said, so I probably wouldn't want to do a convention over that time because I covet those days where I don't have to work and I get to get away and get some quiet time. I said, so I probably won't do a convention over a new moon weekend. And I said, if it's going to be this, where they expect me to charge people all day long to sign and all that, I said, I'm not comfortable with that unless we find a way to work in a charitable aspect and all that stuff. So we're trying to find a way to get a new approach to some convention work. I would love to come back out. I mean, I did MCM Comic-Con Expo. It was MCM Expo. Man, 2011?
Okay.
Probably 2011. So it's been a while since I've been back, and I did it once after that as well. I think we did it after 2013 for Batman. You know, so and I would love to get back out there. You know, I'd love to do Glasgow. I'd love to do, you know, any of these places. It's like, so because I can't believe how many more conventions have now popped up out there. So yeah. I hope to be back in the UK at some point. But as of now, I don't think I've got anything on the books.
I was going to say our nearest big city is Birmingham. And
okay, cool. Yeah, and they have a big one there too.
Yeah, that's huge there. So hopefully we'll see you there again one day.
I would love to be back there. And like I said, I'm trying to figure that all out. A sort of blessing and a curse is that I work frequently, and I have clients. I work from a home studio. Often my day starts at 7 a.m. recording TV and radio spots for a retail client. and then I hop in the car at 8 and try to get to the Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or doing whatever I'm doing to get some animated work in. Then maybe sometimes I come back home, crank out unsupervised records for radio stations, or there's a TV show on NBC that I voice. And it's like you do this stuff, you upload the files, and then you hop back in the car and you get to your afternoon gig for a cartoon, or then you come home and you record for somebody else who says, hey, we need to pick up on a line, that kind of thing. So it's to do when that's a day, to take 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 days off to travel and go someplace, it can create issues. I mean, this goes back to 2013. Troy and I were out there for the launch of Arkham Origins, and I was literally recording voiceovers at a studio in the UK, someplace outside of London, and was I had to do an ISDN connection for my. And meanwhile, we were at this video game award ceremony, so I'm in this suit that I bought just for that event, and I'm inside this voiceover booth, in London. I had to leave the event early, and showed up, did the press and all that kind of stuff with Troy, and we sat at the table for a little while, and I was like, all right, I gotta go, and then take a cab over to this voiceover studio and connect and sell some trucks, and do that while they were, whatever time it was their time, in Detroit. So it presents issues for my job. It's a blessing and a curse. Yeah. It's great to be busy. It's really tough for me to take time off during the week, and sadly to travel to get to these to these places usually means I got to take like a Thursday and a Friday off.
Yeah.
And sometimes the Monday. So it's 3 days off, and it's an inconvenience to a lot of clients, and I try to be sensitive to that.
Yeah. Well, I think the blessing of social media, that I think seeing this sort of output of people who comment on your work, who probably even write to you and stuff, that like you said about people in hospital who have found Ezio like almost a way of healing themselves, I guess, in a way, sort of like virtually, like just losing themselves for a few hours, and you sort of have that creativity to let people sort of come home from a busy day or whatever, family problems or anything, and then they can just sort of like Apex, just play for a few hours, just enjoy the laughing at Mirage, and then go back to their lives. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm a very, very, very fortunate individual that's my job, and I've said this to colleagues. I go, isn't it neat that we get to work in a job where we can show up and leave in a far better mood than what we arrived in, because we just participated in some collective creative thing that's fun. I mean, it's a fun job when it's done well, and when a production is going well. Even if you're working on really hardcore dramatic stuff, it's still fun. You're still in a ping pong suit on a soundstage, with a helmet on, and it's silly, and it's like you're trying to make out with somebody with another helmet on, because your characters are making out, and you're just like, this is so funny. Like, we don't actually make out like that, but it's it's a silly thing for us at times, and it's a blast to be a part of it. Though it's challenging, and the acquisition of the work is the work, and it can be stressful, and it can have its moments and all kind of stuff. Still, at the end of the day, you get to be a part of something that goes out and has this impact, and it's weird. You can't think about that when you're doing it. You just have to focus on getting the work executed. But it is really, really cool to be a part of something that you go, man, this character means a lot to people, and I'm very lucky to be a part of that. And it's a really good gig. I'm a very fortunate individual to be able to do that sort of thing. So
that's fantastic, Roger. I really appreciate your time. It's been
thank you, man.
Fantastic to talk to you. Obviously, we've only spoke over emails and Twitter before, but it's kind of great to actually speak to, not in person, but sort of there. But
yeah, exactly. The virtual person. It's like fist bump. Hi, I'm Roger Craig Smith, and you are watching We Are Fanatical. And I'm fanatical for this We Are Fanatical thing. I'm a fan. I'm fanatical for We Are. I am fanatical about We Are Fanatical. This is fantastic.